Boy rescues a street dog, but days later a tragedy happens, leaving him traumatized and crying 4 days. Buddy was just a dog, but his life was never easy. He didn't have a warm bed or a bowl full of food waiting for him. All he knew were the cold and busy streets of a big city, where no one seemed to care about him. Buddy was already old. His paws were tired from walking so much, and his fur, which must have once been shiny, was now dirty, matted, and marked with wounds that had never properly healed. With every step, Buddy felt his body grow heavier. He would stop occasionally to rest, but knew he couldn't stay in one place too long. The streets were dangerous, and he had learned this the hard way. Once, while he was sleeping in an alley, a group of people kicked a trash bag onto him. He woke up startled and ran away, not understanding what he had done wrong. Since then, he couldn't sleep without keeping one ear alert to any sound. Even so, Buddy kept going. He walked along the sidewalks, dodging people and cars. Occasionally, he looked at someone, wagging his tail slowly, as if pleading, "Please, just see me. Just give me a minute." But people walked right past him. Some didn't even glance his way, while others grimaced or muttered, "What a filthy dog." Hunger was another constant struggle. Buddy's stomach growled so loudly it hurt, but finding food was no easy task. He sniffed around trash cans, looking for scraps, but he always had to fight other dogs or run away before someone chased him off. Once, he found a hard piece of bread on the ground. He had barely taken a bite when a bigger dog appeared, growling. Buddy lowered his head and gave up the bread because he knew that if he tried to resist, he would get hurt. The worst of all was the cold. When night fell, the wind cut like knives. Buddy tried curling up in a corner, behind a box or under an awning, but nothing seemed enough. He shivered until he fell asleep, dreaming of something he had never known, a safe place where he could lie down without fear and feel truly warm. Have you ever seen a dog like this? One that seems to carry the weight of the world with every step? That was Buddy. He had no one. He was tired, hurt, and alone, yet somehow he didn't give up. Something inside him kept pushing him forward, as if he were searching for something or someone. Buddy continued wandering through the crowded streets, but no one seemed to notice him. He was just another stray dog in a city always in a hurry. People rushed past, looking at their phones or chatting with each other, as if he weren't even there. When he tried to get closer, his tail wagging slowly, the response was always the same. Some people stepped aside, as if he were an inconvenience. Others waved him off brusquely. "Get out of here, dog," a man once shouted as Buddy approached a trash can. He lowered his ears and backed away, unable to understand why he was treated that way. Buddy started avoiding crowded places, but hunger often drove him back. That day, he stopped in front of an open-air market. The smell of fresh food was almost unbearable for his empty stomach. He watched from a distance as people bought fruits, vegetables, and bread. It all seemed so close, yet so out of reach. He decided to take a chance. He walked slowly toward a bread stall, but before he could get close, the vendor shooed him away. "Go away. There's nothing for you here." Buddy took a few steps back, his heart sinking. He didn't want to fight. He just wanted a piece of bread, anything to ease the hunger that had been with him for days. Buddy found a corner near the market where he could lie down and watch from afar. He didn't have the courage to try again, not after being chased away so many times. Meanwhile, people kept walking by, some carrying bags full of food, not even noticing the dog curled up on the ground, watching them with sad eyes. The truth was, Buddy was used to being ignored. But deep down, he still had hope. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but he felt he needed to keep going. Maybe, just maybe, somewhere in that big city, someone would truly see him. And you? Have you ever imagined what it's like to be surrounded by people yet feel completely invisible? That's how Buddy lived every day. Before we continue, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you love animals and their emotional stories. That afternoon, the sky began to change. Dark clouds covered the city, and a cold wind started to blow. Buddy felt the shift in the air. He knew rain was coming and needed to find shelter. His paws were already worn from walking, but he had no choice. He walked through busy streets, looking for a spot to stay dry. Every awning and covered space was occupied by people or filled with boxes. He was turned away again when he tried to approach a store. "Get out, dog!" shouted a man, throwing a bucket of water to scare him off. The first drop fell, and soon the rain grew heavier. Buddy ran until he found an empty awning near a closed store. He curled up there, trying to escape the water splashing on the ground. The rain poured down relentlessly, and the sound of the drops hitting the roof made him even more nervous. Buddy was wet, trembling with cold. He tried lying on the hard ground but couldn't relax. His bones ached, and every movement felt like a massive effort. He looked at the people rushing past on the sidewalk, shielding themselves with umbrellas and coats. Some noticed Buddy, but no one stopped. To them, he was just another stray dog. As the wind grew stronger, Buddy closed his eyes and tried to ignore the cold that seemed to pierce through his body. He thought about how nice it would be to have a place where he could stay warm and dry, a place where he wouldn't have to worry about what might happen next. But for a dog like Buddy, that seemed like an impossible dream. As the rain kept pouring, Buddy stayed under the awning, shivering and with a distant look in his eyes. He was used to being ignored, but that day, something different happened. Billy, an 8-year-old boy, was walking with his mother, holding a backpack with his school notebooks. They were walking quickly, trying to escape the rain, when Billy spotted Buddy curled up in the corner. He stopped immediately. "Mom, look over there," he said, pointing at the dog. Billy's mom glanced quickly and said, "Leave it alone, Billy. It's just a stray dog. It might be sick." But Billy couldn't ignore it. He looked at the dog again and noticed something in its eyes, a weariness so deep it seemed as if Buddy had given up on everything. "But Mom, he's all alone. And he's shaking," Billy insisted, letting go of his mom's hand and slowly approaching the dog. His mom tried to call him back, but Billy was already close to Buddy. "Hi, Buddy. Are you cold?" he asked softly. Buddy slowly lifted his head and looked at Billy but didn't move. He was too tired to run, and for the first time, he didn't feel afraid. Billy's tone was different. He wasn't yelling or shooing him away. Buddy just stayed there, waiting to see what would happen next. Billy opened his backpack and pulled out a piece of sandwich he had saved. He placed the bread on the ground near Buddy. "Are you hungry? You can eat it, I don't mind." Buddy looked at the sandwich, then at Billy. He hesitated. Was it safe? After a few seconds, he cautiously dragged himself toward the bread and started eating. Billy smiled with relief. "I knew you were hungry," he said as Buddy ate slowly, savoring every bite. Billy's mom watched from a distance, concerned but also moved. She didn't understand why her son felt so much compassion for this dog, but something about Buddy's eyes seemed different. After Buddy finished eating, Billy slowly extended his hand. "Do you want some petting?" he asked, as if the dog could answer. Buddy looked at his hand, still wary, but didn't pull away. Billy gently touched Buddy's head and began stroking him softly. It was the first kind touch Buddy had felt in a long time, maybe ever. That small gesture stirred something inside Buddy. He didn't wag his tail, but his eyes, once dull, began to shine, even if just a little. For the first time, he felt that someone cared about him. "And you? Have you ever thought about how a simple act of kindness can mean so much to someone who has never experienced it?" For Buddy, that moment was everything he had always searched for. Buddy was still under the awning as Billy continued petting his head gently. Each touch from the boy was like a silent hug, something Buddy had never felt before. The dog was still thin, trembling, and visibly tired, but in that moment he seemed to relax for the first time in a long while. Billy opened his backpack again and pulled out the rest of his sandwich. He broke it into small pieces and placed them on the ground, right next to Buddy. "You can eat all of it. It's for you, okay?" he said with a shy smile. Buddy looked at Billy, then at the sandwich. He hesitated for a moment, but hunger won over fear. He moved slowly and started eating, taking small bites, almost as if he were thanking him. "He must be starving, Mom," Billy said, looking at his mom, who was still watching from a distance with a worried expression. "Look how gentle he is." Billy's mom stepped closer, holding her umbrella against the rain that continued pouring. "Billy, we can't stay here forever. He's just a stray dog." But Billy shook his head. "He's not just a dog. He's special, Mom. You can see it in his eyes." Meanwhile, Buddy finished the sandwich pieces, licking the ground where crumbs had fallen, trying to get every last bit. When he was done, he looked at Billy differently. It wasn't just a look of a fed dog, it was gratitude. Billy noticed Buddy's expression and said, "You liked it, didn't you? I bet it's been a long time since anyone gave you food." He leaned in even closer and gently rested his forehead against the dog's head. "I wish I could take you home. You don't deserve to be out here, alone and in the rain." Billy's mom sighed deeply. She knew her son had a big heart and wouldn't be able to leave without trying to help that dog. "All right, Billy," she said reluctantly. "We'll take him home. But just until we figure out what to do, okay?" Billy's face lit up with a huge smile. "Really, Mom? Thank you. Come on, Buddy. You're coming home with us." Buddy lifted his head and watched the two of them, still trying to understand what was happening. He wasn't used to kindness, much less someone wanting to take him somewhere. He hesitated for a moment, but when Billy stood up and held out his hand, Buddy followed him. As they walked through the rain, Billy kept talking to Buddy as if they were already best friends. "We're going to take care of you, okay? Don't worry. Now you've got us." And for the first time in a long while, Buddy felt that maybe his journey was coming to an end. While the rain still poured, Billy, his mom, and Buddy walked through the streets toward the family's home. The boy held an umbrella in one hand and used the other to gesture as he talked to Buddy. "You're going to like it there, I promise. It's small, but it's really comfy. And you'll have real food," he said, looking at the dog limping beside him. Buddy walked slowly, each step showing how exhausted he was. His paws ached from wandering the streets for so long, and the rain wasn't helping. Even so, he kept going. Something about Billy's excited voice made him want to keep moving, even when his body begged him to stop. Billy's mom glanced back, watching the dog with a mix of concern and doubt. She could see that Buddy was in terrible shape. The way he limped, his filthy fur, and his extreme thinness were clear signs of how much he had suffered. But there was something in his eyes that moved her, a mix of weariness and hope that was hard to ignore. "Do you think he'll be okay, Mom?" Billy asked, his eyes fixed on Buddy. His mom hesitated before replying. "I don't know, Billy. He looks so tired. But we'll do what we can for him." Along the way, Buddy nearly slipped in a puddle, but Billy grabbed the makeshift leash, a rope they had found at the market, and helped steady him. "Careful, Buddy. I've got you, okay? You're not going to fall." Buddy looked at the boy for a moment, as if understanding that he was there to protect him. When they finally reached Billy's house, Buddy stopped at the door. He looked inside cautiously, as if unsure whether he was allowed to enter. Billy laughed. "Go on, come in. This is your new home." Buddy took a hesitant step and crossed the threshold. The warmth of the house was unlike anything he had felt on the streets. It was comforting, like a hug he didn't know he needed. He looked around, sniffing everything curiously. It wasn't big, but it was clean and welcoming. Billy ran to grab an old blanket and spread it on the living room floor. "Look, this is just for you. It's your little spot." Buddy slowly approached and lay down on the blanket, letting out a long sigh. It was as if all the weight of his life on the streets was being left behind in that moment. Billy's mom brought over a bowl of water and another with leftover chicken. She placed them near Buddy and stood watching. He ate slowly, almost as if he couldn't believe the food was really for him. Billy sat beside him and began petting his head, just like before. "See? I told you we'd take care of you. No one's going to chase you away here, and no one's going to hurt you. You're safe now." Buddy closed his eyes as he felt Billy's hand on his head. For the first time, he didn't have to worry about anything. The next morning, Billy woke up earlier than usual. He ran to the corner of the living room where Buddy was still lying, wrapped in the blanket he had received the night before. The dog lifted his head slowly, his tired eyes meeting Billy's, and he wagged his tail slightly when he saw him. "Good morning, Buddy," Billy said, stroking his head. But as he looked closer, Billy noticed something was different. Buddy seemed even weaker, and his breathing sounded labored, as if every breath took a huge effort. Billy's heart sank. "Mom, we need to take him to the vet. He's not doing well." His mom nodded. "Let's go, Billy. The sooner, the better." The walk to the clinic was quiet. Billy held the makeshift leash, walking slowly beside Buddy, who limped with every step. The dog seemed to be giving it his all to keep going, but it was clear he was exhausted. Billy looked at him, tears welling up in his eyes. He tried to be strong, but every soft whimper from Buddy felt like a stab to his heart. When they reached the clinic, the veterinarian, Dr. Thomas, greeted them. He was a kind man with years of experience, and just one look at Buddy told him the dog had been through a lot. "We'll examine him carefully," he said, guiding Buddy into the examination room. Billy stayed in the waiting room with his mom, gripping her hands tightly. He was nervous. "Will he be okay, Mom? I don't want him to suffer anymore." His mom squeezed his hand but didn't say anything. She knew the vet would provide answers but feared they might not be what Billy wanted to hear. After what felt like hours, Dr. Thomas returned. His expression was serious but kind. He knelt down to Billy's level and began speaking slowly. "Billy, your friend is a very special dog. He's strong and has survived things that many wouldn't." But what?" Billy asked, his voice trembling. "He's very sick, my boy," said the veterinarian. "His body is tired. He has problems with his bones, his heart, and he's already quite old. I don't think he has much time left." The words hit Billy like a heavy stone in his chest. "No, it can't be. He just found us. He deserves to live longer. He can't leave now." Dr. Thomas placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I know it's hard to hear, Billy. But what matters now is the time you have together. He finally has a home, someone who cares about him. That's what will make all the difference in the days he has left." Billy couldn't hold back his tears. He turned to his mother, who hugged him tightly. "Mom, he can't die. He deserves to be happy." With a trembling voice, his mother replied, "I know, my love. But what we can do now is make sure he feels loved until the very end." When Buddy came back to the waiting room, Billy ran to him and hugged him. The dog, even weak, rested his head on the boy as if he understood that Billy was crying for him. Billy wiped his tears and looked into Buddy's eyes. "I promise you'll be happy now, okay? I'll take care of you. You'll never feel alone again." Buddy wagged his tail slowly, and for a moment it was as if he was saying, "Thank you." The days that followed were the most intense of Billy and Buddy's lives. Ever since he learned that the dog didn't have much time, Billy decided to make every moment special. He wanted Buddy to feel the love he had never known on the streets, even if just for a little while. Buddy grew weaker each day, but even so, he seemed different. It was as if, despite all the hardships, he had finally found peace. Billy was always by his side, holding his paw or gently stroking his head. "You're the best dog in the world, you know that," Billy would say, while Buddy looked at him with eyes that, though tired, radiated gratitude. One night, Buddy seemed quieter than usual. He barely moved from the blanket Billy had laid out for him. Billy's mom noticed and said, "Billy, I think he's very tired. It might be time to say goodbye." Billy felt a lump in his throat. He knew this moment would come, but he wasn't ready. He lay down beside Buddy on the floor and wrapped his arm around him. "You've been so strong, Buddy. I wish you could stay with me forever, but I know you're tired." Buddy let out a deep sigh, as if every breath took all the strength he had left. He slowly closed his eyes but wagged his tail one last time, as if to say, "It's okay." Billy started crying, holding the dog tighter. "I love you, Buddy. Thank you for letting me be your friend. You'll never be forgotten, I promise." Billy's mom watched from afar, trying to hold back her tears, but she couldn't. The love between the boy and the dog was so strong it seemed to fill the entire room. With one final breath, Buddy rested. He passed away in Billy's arms, surrounded by the love he had always searched for. Billy cried until he fell asleep next to the blanket where Buddy had lain. His mom gently covered him and thought about how a simple stray dog had changed their lives so profoundly. Buddy had found what he had always looked for, a final embrace full of love. The next morning, Billy woke up with his face still damp from the tears of the night before. He looked at the blanket where Buddy had spent his last hours and felt his heart ache. He knew his friend was no longer there, but at the same time, he felt that Buddy would never truly leave him. With his mom's help, Billy gave Buddy a small burial in the backyard, under a large tree Buddy used to watch from the window. They dug carefully, and Billy placed Buddy's blanket with him. Before covering it with soil, the boy took something out of his pocket, the piece of rope they had used as a leash. He placed it on the blanket and said softly, "So you'll never forget that you were loved." After covering the grave, Billy took a piece of wood and carefully wrote on it, "Buddy, the dog who taught me what love is." He placed the marker in front of the tree, ensuring no one would ever forget the resting place of his friend. The days that followed were tough for Billy. The house felt quieter without Buddy, and the boy missed hearing the sound of his paws shuffling across the floor or feeling the weight of the dog's head resting on his legs. But amidst the sadness, there was something greater, a feeling of gratitude. He knew that, even for a short time, he had given Buddy the love he always deserved. Inspired by his experience with Buddy, Billy started doing something different. He began collecting leftover food from his house and the market to feed other stray dogs. "If I couldn't save Buddy for longer, I'll help other dogs like him," he told his mom. Soon, Billy began involving other kids from the neighborhood. He shared Buddy's story with anyone willing to listen. "He was just a stray dog, but he taught me that love doesn't need much. Just a hug, just a chance." The kids started helping, bringing food, water, and even old blankets for the dogs wandering the city streets. Buddy's legacy grew. Billy's small act of kindness caught the attention of other adults, who began joining the cause. Within a few months, there was a community group dedicated to caring for abandoned animals. All because of a dog who only wanted to be seen, who only wanted to be loved. Billy never forgot Buddy. Whenever he missed him, he would go to the tree in the backyard, sit by the marker, and tell Buddy everything he was doing for the other dogs. "You showed me that even those who suffer deserve love, Buddy. And I'll never forget that." And you? Have you ever imagined how a simple act of love can change not just one life, but many? Buddy may have gone, but he left Billy, and all of us, a lesson that will never be forgotten. Love has the power to transform the world. Thank you for watching the video until the end. Remember to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about this story in the comments.